They called it a skirmish, a border dispute, a minor conflict in a forgotten corner of the world. But they were lying. What really happened on those frozen plains and burning coasts was a war that decided the fate of empires, before the world ever knew it was at stake. It was a war fought in shadows, written in blood, and buried in silence. And when it ended, the world we knew ceased to exist. But no one was told, not because it didn't matter, but because it mattered too much. It began not with an invasion, but a letter. In the spring of 1904, as Europe postured and flexed its muscles in anticipation of coming storms, another storm was already erupting far to the east. Between two nations racing to modernize, desperate to become empires before they were swallowed by them. Russia, Japan. At the time, Russia was one of the largest empires on Earth, vast, cold, and unstable. Japan was small, hungry, and rising from centuries of isolation with a vengeance. On paper, the war between them should have been a formality. Russia had the numbers, the land, the ships. Japan had audacity and a grudge. But beneath the surface, something darker was brewing. This wasn't just a battle between two nations. This was a contest between two visions of the future. One rooted in decaying monarchies, the other in industrial fury. One armed with arrogance, the other with desperation. Japan struck first without a declaration. On the night of February 8, 1904, under the cover of darkness, Japanese torpedo boats attacked the Russian fleet docked at Port Arthur. It was a surgical strike. Precise, devastating. Russia was caught off guard. And suddenly, the lesser nation was leading the war. For the next year and a half, both sides would bleed across Manchuria and the Yellow Sea. The Japanese forces moved swiftly, efficiently, crushing Russian divisions and choking off their supply lines. Russia responded slowly, often incompetently, sending soldiers to die in mud and cold with no clear purpose. But something was off. As the war dragged on, strange reports emerged. Witnesses described entire battalions vanishing into forests, never to be seen again. Strange new artillery that didn't resemble any known Russian or Japanese design appeared briefly on battlefields, then disappeared just as quickly. In the hills outside Mukden, a group of Japanese scouts stumbled upon a hidden Russian outpost, equipped with machinery that glowed in the dark and maps drawn with unfamiliar constellations. They were silenced before they could report what they saw. And then came the Battle of Tsushima. It was the moment everything changed. Russia, desperate to regain its pride, sent its Baltic fleet, an armada of nearly 40 ships, on an 18,000-mile journey around the world to reinforce its forces in the Pacific. It took them 8 months. When they arrived, Japan was waiting. On May 27, 1905, in the narrow straits between Korea and Japan, the two fleets clashed. It wasn't just a battle. It was a slaughter. In less than 24 hours, the Japanese Navy decimated the Russian fleet. 21 ships sunk. Over 5,000 men lost. It was the first time in modern history that an Asian power had defeated a European one in a major war. And the world shook. But what made it more unsettling was what happened after. Just days following the battle, Japanese officers discovered a wrecked Russian vessel drifting aimlessly. Its crew dead not from wounds, but from something else. No gunshots, no burns, just blackened eyes, clenched jaws, and veins that seemed to burst from within. The logs of that ship were confiscated immediately and sealed by the Japanese government. They were never released. Some say the ship had been part of an experimental Russian division, one testing new forms of warfare. Others believe it had made contact with something it wasn't supposed to. Whatever the truth was, the war came to a sudden, eerie halt. President Theodore Roosevelt brokered the peace deal in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, earning a Nobel Peace Prize for ending a war he never fully understood. The Treaty of Portsmouth humiliated Russia and elevated Japan to imperial status. The balance of power shifted, and the countdown to World War I began in silence. But behind closed doors, the aftermath was chaos. Russian generals returned home not just defeated, but paranoid. One reportedly claimed to have seen a weapon that froze time. Another was institutionalized after trying to warn the Tsar about a machine that could see the future. Japanese officials fared no better. Some became obsessed with secrecy. Others vanished. A naval officer named Fujita disappeared in 1906, leaving behind a journal filled with cryptic symbols and drawings of skies torn open by beams of light. Was it madness? Or did they witness something the world wasn't meant to know? In the years that followed, the world hurtled toward catastrophe. Assassinations, revolutions, a war so large they had to number it. But what no one tells you is that World War I didn't start in 1914. It started the moment Japan sank the Russian fleet, when the old world order shattered, and no one noticed, because the real war, the one that changed everything, wasn't about land or power or empire. It was about who would control the future. And in that final hidden conflict, Japan won the battle. But the world lost something far greater: its illusions, and perhaps its freedom. So next time you read a textbook that skips the Russo-Japanese War in 2 paragraphs, ask yourself why. Maybe it's because the war didn't fit the narrative. Or maybe because if we knew the truth, we'd have to admit the world changed long before we were ready, and no one was told.